My name is Roelof Douwstra. I'm a co-founder of Quint. I'm assisted by Erik Rozenmeijer, who will do the chat and all the kind of things. So, Erik, do you want to say something about yourself, or because we've been working a long time together? So
yes,
just introduce yourself for a minute.
Yeah, my name is Erik Rozenmeijer, consultant within Quint, working for 7 years full-time at implementing Obeya's and practicing the art of management. Yeah, I'm working a lot with Roelof also. So I will handling the Q&A, and that's my role today.
Erik and me and some of our colleagues are working with Obeya for about 10 years now. So it was in Holland, first time at Kadaster, which is the land registry here in Holland. And I've been doing that for big companies in the last 10 years. We specialize in doing Obeyas for top management, which is a challenge. It's quite easy if you talk about Obeyas from agile teams, lean teams, because they got these kind of working mindset already there. But our biggest challenge is the management. And that's what I'm going to talk about. If we want to have real change, we have to change real people. And that's probably fits perfectly in his thoughts, that it's all about people and behavior, and how we used Obeya to change behavior of management. And it's a bit different than the lean philosophy or the agile philosophy. Of course, it fits in, but we think that changing people in management style to do what we want to do, to be better and to produce better and to be more flexible, we need more than just a KPI. So I'll put it on the screen. Let's see, where's my share? Actually, this is where it's all about. We think that the most difficult thing in the agile mindset and these kind of things is how to change the people instead of change the organization or change the systems. And of course, both are, but especially on top level management, this is a real challenge. So this is who we are. We are connected to Obeya Associations and try to help them and ourselves to develop more and more sustainable content for the coming years to come. So what we see is, again, the purpose is that a lot of companies working with lean, agile, are now adapting to Obeya. And of course, the purpose is more flexibility, faster production, more fun to work, etc., etc. All the things you already know. But actually, Obeya is so much more than the connection to the agile way of working or the lean mindset of how you want to call it. So what we see is that a lot of Obeyas, especially where we on top management level, try to adapt agile working for management teams, which actually is quite difficult. For example, if you're a management team, you have to deal with a government, which is not agile at all. Then you can say, I'm very agile, but it's very difficult to report agile, to be agile, if your product owner or whatever it may be, the ministry is not. So adapting a style and a way of working where you can connect the agility and the agile way of working and mindset to the non-agile way of working of your employee, that's probably the biggest question for all the people who are doing this on that level. So to make it sure that not everything is agile, I used Stacy, probably a lot of them, you already know them, because what we see is that a lot of companies who come from the agile way and not from the lean way are trying to make everything agile. So they're trying to make big chunks to small chunks, the push and pull, all those different kind of things you probably already know. But actually, some things are not agile at all. I mean, when the cause and the results are simple, you shouldn't use agile. I mean, let's be honest, we should not use agile to turn a cap on a bottle. I mean, that's very clear. If you want to close the bottle, you got a cap you can put on it. You don't need agile, it's just straight on simple. The other thing, it could be a bit more complicated, but still quite simple. So for example, if we want to change a battery in your car because your car doesn't start, you don't need things like agile at all. I mean, you just take a new battery, put it in, and of course it's complex to put it in, but the result will be very clear, it will start again. And then you get all these kind of thing where it's very well known where we want to go. So the purpose is quite clear, but how to get there is quite difficult. So that's where agile comes in, where you try to pull it in small parts, like the epics and the features, but that's not the language of the top management at all. And then again, on the top level, well, if it's chaos, like we don't know where we're going, we don't know how complex it is, I just say good luck. You can't use any system, just have fun. So saying that if you want to change the way of working of a company and the way of working with the management team which belongs to it, you have to be clear what to call complex and not. Because I see a lot of companies trying to put everything into agile or everything into stand-ups and things like that, which actually does not work. So only the complex part is actually the way to go if you look at kind of agile. So for management, that's very difficult because management are used to simple things, complicated and complex things. But what we see is a lot of teams try to make everything complex, which is actually not true. So if we look at in transition, and you will put it on the whiteboard, you will see there's not a lot of things like KPIs, goals, measurement, and things like that. It's more like motivation, challenges, how to improve people, all these kind of things. And actually, if you look at big transformations where management teams are responsible for that transformation, not to make it happen because that's all the people together, but at least to invent it. These kind of things are not on the boards. So if you actually look at your own Obeya and you would look at how much is there about motivation, about knowledge development, about happiness, about career opportunities, about all these kind of things, which are actually more behavioral driven than driven by KPIs, most of the Obeyas fail. And I think Tim said it so nicely at the end. We didn't talk about it, that he said, it's so much more than just the KPIs and so on. So what we see that actually letting an Obeya really work means maybe 80% is behavior, especially on a management level, because they don't think agile, they don't have the mindset of agile. So behavior is the biggest challenge, at least for us as we're working on that management teams, to make things really changing. So to have a good change, it's more about behavior than the other things. So, of course, we already seen it, truth, facts, figures, result, ownership, all these kind of things we know from Obeya. It's about flexibility, insight, and of course you need the truth, and it's the single point of truth. You need facts to discuss the figures. So what we say is that a simple Obeya or a dojo, which I just learned, looks like 4 walls, is that it actually happening on the floor. And it was the same on the dojo. Although there was all those kind of nice things on the wall, it was all happening on the floor itself. The tea ceremony, there was all nice things, it was happening on the floor. And that's what we found out, that even if you had a strategy wall, which would translate to a change or portfolio wall of things which are important, you would translate it to a run or performance wall where you said, these are the things we really want to have. And of course, you want to have the impact between the two and solve the problems. Again, that only will succeed if the behavior on the middle part will be the right. And that's exactly what Tim meant at the end, where he says it's so much more than the Obeya. So this is what we found out. So we think we're not going to talk about strategy, change portfolio, run, and impediments of how do you call them, because that's the blue part of the Obeya. And so what we would like to think and what we talk about is in what way a Obeya would help to change the company by changing its behavior of the management team. What I like, and this is what Bart and Dolf already said, that they changed the way we teach Obeyas and the way we set it up. So we got the fundamentals, which are talking about what you all need, what is an Obeya, what kind of behavior, what is the portfolio, what is the strategy to run, and so. And then, of course, the Obeya builder, where we think about how the walls are built. There's a different skill set you need over there. And of course, the Obeya host, which is actually about behavior. So the Obeya host, of course, knows how to build an Obeya and does know the fundamentals, but their added value will be on the behavior of the people within the Obeya. So I'm very pleased with the new content and the new way they set it up. We used the last years, of course, of the pandemic. We used iObeya. So I see Jacqueline is also here from iObeya, because we found out that we came from a physical Obeyas with, you know, all the stickers and the magnets and all these kind of things. And then on the 16th of March in Holland, we had a lockdown. So in that weekend, as in one weekend, together with my colleague here also attending, we transferred the physically Obeyas to online Obeyas. And we started it with Excel sheets, which we made very graphic because it was easy and we could run it on Monday within the environment of our clients without any security aspect. But actually we changed that now to iObeya, where we have the functionality we need from Obeya. We're very glad to see the next move back to a physical Obeya, because if you talk about behavior, and that's what Tim said also, behavior in a physical Obeya is much better to do than in an online Obeya. So we actually changing back to a physical Obeya, but with electronic screens. So we're still using iObeya, so we can switch between online and offline if we want to, but we are physically back in the room with big touch screens, which just replaced all the whiteboards we already had. So actually we build the cascading of all the boards. So when we were talking about change, there's some other people building the change than actually implementing. So what we see a lot in the company there's a team around the management who thinks about a strategy, where to go and things. So they're actually thinking about the change they really want to. But the implementation, of course, is on the floor. It's on the Gemba. So what we see is the advantage of building a cascade on the within Obeya. So we combined all the Obeyas to top level and back again, and of course horizontal. So we made it as a whole system. So if something strategic did go wrong on the floor, we would see it on top level and the other way around. Because what we see is that the change building, so the strategic change building and the implementing is actually not done by the same people in Europe. So we see a lot of people thinking about strategy and a lot of people doing the strategy. And that's where we think that the biggest disconnect is, because when you start with an Obeya within a management team, all the bullets are green, and we call it watermelon management. You know, watermelon management, you just cut a watermelon, it's green from the outside, but pretty red at the inside. So the behavior of the top management and the management team below it is actually to say everything is okay. So they will define it to green. So building the change and implementing is not really connected. So what we see a lot is if we go into a management team, Obeya, we have the strategy on the wall and we ask them, okay, what programs are really #1 in implementing the change? And then they come up with a board with 250 programs, and only 2 of them are actually used by the strategy. So the discussion there would be more like, why is there only 2 programs, and what to do about the other 100? Should we stop them? Should we stay? So there's a big disconnect between what the management team thinks what is happening and actually what is happening on the floor. So this is where very important to know, because this is all has to do with behavior. Gezondheid, Annemarie. I saw someone sneezing. So what we used in the beginning, we used Obeya. You can see it on the top screen. I'm not going into Obeya. So we used the big touch screens to implement strategies to programs. And actually, we're now going back to the bottom picture where we are really have a stand-up, which we like, so we can interfere with each other on behavior by the screens. But then again, only things really happen if the shit hits the fan. So what we saw is where Obeyas were a bit like moi. When the pandemic hits, it became for a lot of companies the only way to come together in one room, in 1 hour to talk about. So actually the last 2 years, what we saw is that Obeya is really taking off in a lot of companies. But all the people, including me, are very enthusiastic of the use of Obeya and how it changes behavior. But what we do is we see that the management has the most destructive behavior in Obeyas. So what we do with management teams is play the game of destructive behavior, which is fun, but actually also very hurting, because it's not about data, it's not about graphs, it's not about strategy, it's not about numbers, it's not about KPI, it's about them. So what we do is we use the destructive behavior. We mostly do that within 8 weeks when we start, not at the beginning, but after a while, because then they recognize it. And then the management teams, we ask them to put on the board how they could destroy this way of working. So actually we'd be firing them up by saying, leaving the room, lying, take a chance and put it on the board. So actually they put things on the board like, oh, we'll be late. We talk a lot about details, but not about progress. Let's talk about an hour on one detail. And of course, if someone says, we always say, no, don't agree. I don't think that's true. So there's always dispute. And of course, there's a lot of people in the back of the room say nothing. So actually, they're just tourists, as we call them, because they're not doing anything. And of course, one of the biggest examples which management will do, they will say, you, and then they put their finger to me, put on the wrong figures. This is not true. It's not red, it's green. And then I say, why did you put up the wrong figures? Because it's your figures. So it's all about challenging the system. So what we see is we ask them to put everything on paper, what will go wrong. But we fight the system. I don't think this system is actually this good for our way of management. Maybe you've heard this sentence before. It's the same guys who say, I want Obeya, say, well, I don't think this is really good for us. So transparency hurts. And be bossy. I don't know if you know that. No, we're not going to talk about this now. We do that next time. And of course, we're not helping each other and not telling the truth. So actually, we ask them to put this on the board. How to destroy an Obeya and the way of working. And they love it. They love to do it. It's just a few examples. They fire up and they have in 5 minutes, 60 papers of how to destroy a Obeya. And then we start with the next question. And then we uncover the right part of the sheet, said, okay, let's be very honest, really honest. Yeah. What of the things you just put on the board is happening today? And that's most of the time a really painful exercise. As what we see is that 80% of what they put on the board, how to destroy this way of working, is actually happening today. And only 20% is not done anymore. So what we see in this kind of exercise is this is all about behavior. And for us, we are external Obeya coaches. So for us, it's simple because we just go home and don't need a career at that office. But being an internal coach, this is a hard way in interfering in the behavior of that management team. So I would ask you, use this kind of method, because this is what they do. They put the sticky notes on the board, and they put it on what we do now. Leave that chart in your Obeya. And every time something like happens, like saying nothing, not telling the truth, being too loud, talk too long, you just have to point out, this is what you said. You said, don't talk too long. I think you're talking too long. So it doesn't affect you. It's a way of letting the Obeya do the interference on behavior. So this is a very important instrument for us on top level management, so they don't get really to you as a person. And Einstein already says incompetence, I think that's the biggest crisis. So actually what you do by interfering in the behavior of management teams is interfering in incompetence of leadership. And of course they have to learn, and they can learn. So it's very important to step by step try to improve that kind of working in a leadership team, and otherwise maybe not be afraid to ask other people to join, and sometimes other people to leave. So put the behavior in the Obeya, just put it as a chart in the Obeya and use it every time to interfere on the behavior of the people within the room. So setting behavior examples is going to be tough, because the change, they always want to talk about numbers. And of course, Lean Six Sigma does not always help. It's very mathematical. It's very blue. It's very about facts and figures, but it's also a way to say, I don't like this because this is too transparent for me. So a lot of managers find it very difficult to implement these kind of things for themselves, but very easy to implement it for their teams. So, and that's all about behavior. So we think it's very important to make that part, but also know that if you are into a transition, which actually you only can call a transition after you've done the transition, like say, if you look back, we had a big transition. I don't think you can plan it that well. Although the purpose could be on the left side, to do those steps, we need the things on the right side. And I do not see a lot of Obeyas having the behavioral parts in the Obeya itself. For example, it was a nice, he talked about the Gemba walk, and where a manager really goes back to the floor and asks the people who know what he can do to help and to improve the work. But actually, if you would ask in a top management room, how many people do a Gemba walk, you probably end up with 0. So why not say at least 2 times a month, you will go down to your teams, ask them what they are concerned about from a perspective of strategy, what they can do or not. And if you're not meeting your KPI on Gemba walks, you got a leadership problem. They're not on the boards. For example, they say, we want to be the best company in the country, so it's easy for us to get people on board. So we have to make a lot of impact outside. So actually, what you say is that your company wants to be a #1 recognized company for the work. So why not say, how many keynotes did our engineers had last year on big congresses? Because if there's a congress and they talk, it will have impact. How much impact did we have in the press? They're not on the board. How happy are we together? How many times do we, I know a lot of companies who do research every 3 years about the happiness of their people. Well, actually, it won't work, because it's like a 6 or a 7. And then what to do about it, I don't know. How many to 7? Yeah, we'll see it in 3 years. So things like a happiness index is a thing which you probably do every month. Very simple, press the button. Within Quint, we have used a trust index. So every money we have to push a button and say, are we still happy? And if we're not happy, we have to say why. That makes the index very up and down. We just had a the biggest party of our company last weekend. So probably our happy index is very high now. But these kind of things might be much more important than the KPIs. So, for example, when did you receive as a person a positive feedback from your colleagues? So that's not criticism, it's positive feedback. And if people say none, then we get worried, because if there's no feedback cycle, so we're not talking, we're not connecting, like Tim said, to each other, then everything is working for itself. You will see these kind of things. So the way of working and the feedback culture and putting this in an Obeya of a management team is a real challenge, but also a big game changer. Because you're not talking about the things they already talked about for years, and they're not stupid. They had the reporting, so the Obeya will not change the whole world at once, but they're changing their behavior to each other and to their own colleagues. Using the Obeya is the biggest game changes we've seen. And we always ask our customers, what is the biggest change you've had? And most of the time they will end up saying, we are a team for the first time as a management team, and we go to the people who know where it's all about. We know that something is going wrong. We can't solve it in a minute, but at least we know now. So for a management team, there are probably in the beginning other perspective than just the normal things. So if you want to, these are just a few of our own Obeya sheets. So you see happiness index, feedback culture, and we measure it every month. And this is a bigger discussion than, say, the KPI of how many hours we made. So these kind of KPIs are most of the time missing in top management Obeyas, which I think would really support the change. So again, for real change on the left side, we need a real change on the right side. And if we need a real change on the right side, you can use an Obeya, but you need to be aware that you have to talk about the behavior and not about the boards alone. So I think the most important thing is people, you can change people, but organizations don't change. So don't start with putting in more statistics, mandates, roles, KPIs, watermelon reports, and all these kind of things, but actually rethink and how to start with the KPIs on changing the behavior of the management team who actually would make the difference. Thank you. Questions?
No real questions in
no
the
real
chat.
Questions. I'm being too clear.
No, but the statement about that we aim for the things on the left, but we should focus more on the things on the right, what you were stating. So, yeah, no other questions. So maybe there are questions now, not in the chat, but is there somebody who has a question on the story of Roelof?
Can do it live if you want to, or don't dare to. Then we got another 3 minutes to go for the ending session. Thank you very much, and I'll see you there.
Oh,
no questions anymore, Eric?
Yeah, there's one. What do Gemba walks looks like virtually?
Well, you can join your teams. It's not that difficult. So teams do have sessions, just join them. And of course, it's better to join them live. I think at this moment, the virtual things are a little bit behind us, so you still can do it live. You can use software virtually, but I think you can be together physically. But I think it's important that you join your teams and talk with your teams, and that's how to do the Gemba walk in a virtual way. I think that's still complies in an online environment.
Okay. Another question. Now there are the different methods to capture team happiness virtual. What kind of means or methods do we use for that?
Very simple, because happiness is not a fact. Happiness is a state of mind. So actually we ask people every month how happy are you with me as a management or me as an employee? Or so it's always about a person or a company. And if they say I'm very happy, they have to say in 2 or 3 sentences why. And if they're not happy, they should say why they're not happy. And then it's not reported by individual, it's reported by teams. And the management teams will use that on their Gemba walks. So they will go back to the teams and say, guys, I'm very shocked because a lot of people you're not so happy. What can I do to help? And that's where the things are getting combined. So make it very simple. Don't make it too difficult. Make it like a press on a button electronically or physically, and ask 1 or 2 questions which are not mandatory. So make it easy for them, and you'll see 80% of the people will hit the button every month and be honest with it, as long as you go back to the teams and do something about it. So acting, which Tim was ending, if you're not acting on their disbehavior or on their unhappiness, it will not, the next time you'll only have 50% and you'll end up with 2%. So acting is really important.
Okay. Another one, how do you start transforming management to Obeya when they have not heard about it yet?
Oh, that's a nice one, but also a very easy one. The best way is just say, give me one day, and I prepare a room for you where you got insight from your strategy to your programs to your run, just to have the discussion. It's the easiest way to do because it's very difficult to explain. It's like you have to experience an Obeya. I think that's the best way because you can do all the nice talking about flexibility because that's done by everyone. But actually, I would take them to a other customer or the other company to feel it, or just give them in one day, because you can start this in one day, even if it's not complete, but they will feel the interference, the behavioral thing directly. So I would just say, start with one day, get some people on board who know what to do, and do it after a week, and then start the first Obeya just to let them feel what it will do with them. It gets a lot about feeling and not about knowledge. Thank you.
Yeah, a check question, and maybe I can answer that one. You still need to work on the left KPIs while working on the right, on the behaviors on the right, correct? Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, if you work on the right, you can easier achieve the left, basically, because behavioral is the reason why you sometimes not achieve the results. So you need to intervene on the right in order to make the left happen, is my opinion. And then thanks for the IDs. The game will be definitely played. Thanks you, Roelof. You inspired to continue with behavior in Obeya. Oh, and another question: do you recommend safety check beforehand to see how safe people feel to give honest feedbacks? Oh yeah, okay.
That's a difficult one. I would rather start with destructive behavior, because that's a discussion which concerns them all, because there will be a paper saying nothing. And that's, of course, has to do something with safety sometimes. So if you start with it, you're actually putting it in perspective, and it's to start with that discussion might be very unsafe. So I rather do it by destructive behavior first. And if there's a lot of things like people not telling anything in an Obeya, and someone puts on be silent so we can destroy, and then start the discussion, maybe it has to do with wrong people on the wrong place, no safety in the room, and then you can start that discussion.
Yeah, and we also had once, a couple of times, that we asked the question: do you, via these questions, do you feel safe to speak up and say everything you want? And there were, for example, in the management team, 2 persons anonymously said, we're not feeling safe to say everything we want. Yeah. Okay, then you have, of course, something to discuss, but you cannot do that with the people in the room. You need to then say, okay, the persons who completed this answer, please come back to me on another moment if you're open to discuss it. So, but that's all about attitude and behavior and feeling safe. Another one, really inspiring presentation. Thank you. I think this is it, Roelof.
Thank you very much. And I can stop sharing so I can see you. Yes, now can you see everyone? Thank you very much for listening on this Friday day with nice weather outside. That's why I put my curtains, so I don't have to know it's beautiful weather outside. So let's go to the end and then enjoy a drink in the garden of wherever you are. Thank you very much and hope to speak to you again. Bye-bye.